A lot of Titanic survivors didn't talk about the disaster after it happened, but passenger and survivor Dorothy Gibson went on to star in the first motion picture about Titanic, as herself, a month after it happened. This woman had a very interesting life. Like, I would watch a full TV series about her. So let's get into it. When she was pretty young, she was really involved in performance, so theater, vaudeville, Broadway, and then in 1909, she started posing for commercial artist Harrison Fisher. And no, he was not drawing her like one of his French girls, but she did become one of his favorite models. She was all over postcards and merchandise, and he even used her likeness to draw illustrations for the covers of magazines like Cosmo. It was around this time that she met and married her husband George Battier Jr. I couldn't find a picture of him, so we'll just use this. But that didn't go well. They separated really soon and got divorced. Her film career really started taking off and she was getting more and more roles. And after filming a lot of movies, she and her mother took a trip to Europe. But they were only there for a couple of weeks before the film studio called them and wanted them to come back so Dorothy could start filming more, which is why they booked tickets for Titanic. The night of the sinking, she had been playing bridge with some New York bankers. Just before midnight, she went back to her stateroom to join her mom, and she felt what she described as a long-drawn, sickening crunch. She wasn't super worried, but she went up to the deck to find out what was going on, and she saw that the deck was lopsided. So she ran, got her mom, and came back up to the deck. And an officer explained that they had hit an iceberg and it would cause a slight delay. And then, of course, came the lifeboats. So she and her mom got in Lifeboat 7, which was the first one that was launched. Problem was, the lifeboat had a massive leak, so they had to cork it somehow. And Dorothy said this was remedied by volunteer contributions from the lingerie of the women and the garments of men. Obviously, she made it to safety on Carpathia, but she said, "I will never forget the terrible cry that rang out from people who were thrown into the sea and others who were afraid for their loved ones." After her rescue, she slept for 26 hours. So movie producer Jules Brulator sent out a film crew to interview the survivors. And plot twist, he was having an affair with Dorothy even though he was married and 19 years older. So he met up with her the night she returned, proposed, and asked her to star in a movie about Titanic. And they started filming within a few days, and it premiered only a few weeks later. This is a promo photo for the movie, and she was wearing the same clothes she was the night of the sinking. Unfortunately, the only known prints of the movie were destroyed in a fire in 1914 at the studio, and unsurprisingly, she quit acting shortly after this. But let's get back to the affair. They got exposed in a really public way in 1913. Dorothy was driving one of his sports cars and she hit a man who died. So there was this really big court case, and it got revealed that she was his mistress. And Jules was separated from his wife at this point, but because of the publicity and the humiliation of it, she sued him for divorce. The divorce was finalized in 1915 and he married Dorothy in 1917. But they separated within 2 years, and by 1919 their marriage had been dissolved as an invalid contract. And Dorothy never remarried. Around World War II, her story gets a little hazier, but definitely not any less interesting. She and her mom were living in Florence, Italy when the war broke out. Some accounts say that they didn't return to America because they were scarred from their journey on Titanic, so they were just kind of trapped in Nazi-occupied territory. And other accounts say that they stayed there willingly because they were fascist sympathizers and maybe spies. If she was in fact a sympathizer, she renounced that by 1944, and she got arrested as an anti-fascist agitator, and she was thrown into a prison in Milan. She described the prison as a living death. In the prison, she met double agent Dr. Ugo, who helped her escape under the pretense that she was a Nazi spy. So she got to Switzerland, where she was interrogated by the American consulate. And again, it's a little hazy here. Some say that they weren't able to figure out if she was a spy or not, and others say that the person interrogating decided that she wasn't bright enough to have been a spy. Regardless, they let her go. So she went back to Paris, where she died only a few months later at the age of 56, probably from some kind of heart condition. But her mother Pauline lived for 15 more years, and was very loudly pro-Nazi, and she died in 1961 in a Paris hotel at age 94. Let me know in the comments if there are any Titanic passengers you guys want to hear about.